to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and you're about to listen to a hypnosis session all about having the resilience and the emotional resources to cope with either a toxic boss or someone that is bullying or micromanaging in nature. And I was working with a client that was very, very successful. They'd climbed the career ladder, got themselves in a very, very high position, but they happened to have a new line manager that they were directly reporting to that would take the credit for the work that they did, play them out of position. They would undermine them and ask them questions in quite an aggressive, interrogative type of way. They would give them more and more things to do outside of their core responsibilities and be quite passive aggressive and almost kind of see if they can get under their skin. Now, that's not a healthy environment to be, and in the long term is a lose-lose situation. Sometimes you get managers that are quite insecure and they like to belittle and make other people feel small, but nobody can survive in a toxic environment for too long. Either they quit, or they just find something else to do, or situations change wherever they're in. And what this client originally felt is they felt quite helpless and they felt quite frustrated and they were getting burnt out because they were working way beyond their contracted hours and they were not really getting the benefit of that. So they felt between a rock and a hard place. So what this session does is it makes them feel that whatever happens, things are going to change. Either the dynamics where they're working are going to change or they're going to find somewhere else to work and that will be the change. But in the meantime, we wanted them to feel as resourceful as possible to handle it. And there's two key things. One is a metaphor of a force field. And most people have seen at least one cartoon, TV show, or movie that has this representation of a force field. And normally it's some kind of energy sphere that kind of goes around the hero. It means they're immune to kind of laser beams or any kind of destructive things like bullets. It's a force field. It protects them. So that's the connotation of a force field. And then the second is this kind of spirit of composure. And actually, one of the techniques that particularly toxic bosses will use is they thrive with ambiguity. So they'll say, right, just get it done without defining what it means. Oh, you can do better than that without defining actually what success looks like. So when dealing with people like that, it's a really good idea to feel composed and curious and say, okay, what would it take to be successful in this situation? Or I've got so many things that I need to do. If I have to prioritize one, which is more important than the other? And the moment you start having this mirror back in terms of accountability and responsibility, a lot of their power goes away. Now, quite often when these kind of toxic bosses start feeling like they're losing power, their reaction is to try and be more aggressive or pushy. So that's why the force field alongside these kind of communication strategies is quite necessary and useful. And one of my favorite belief systems is that you get what you tolerate, not what you deserve. And unfortunately, if someone's mean to you, rude to you, disrespectful to you, and by being rude, mean, or disrespectful, they get more productivity or they get more results or they get more credit that they're taking from the work that you do, actually you're enabling that. You are encouraging and positively reinforcing the very behavior that you don't want. And a boundary is a boundary. A boundary is what you are willing or not willing to do. and you have the right to do this. Now, a lot of time fear is used, and that stops people because a lot of individuals will go inside their head and catastrophize and say, but I need this job and I can't pay the rent or the mortgage without this job, and maybe I'll get a bad reference. And all of these things are used as a weapon, as a stick to threaten and coerce people into doing what the toxic boss wants them to do. But if you feel liberated in the sense that, no, I have these boundaries, I'm going to stick to these boundaries, I'm willing to work a little bit extra, but I'm not willing to work weekends, and they become your boundary, what you tend to find is that it forces the other person to respond accordingly. And do you really want to stay in a place where you're not being appreciated or respected anyway? So I would encourage you to think of your specific environments and then tap into this idea of a force field and what would managing this relationship and managing that future look like for you. And if you like the idea of a bespoke session working with me directly, I would say a great thing to do in the first instance is either to take a suggestibility test, a suitability test, or watch a webinar that I've created. Both of those things are in the description of this episode. So check that out, click on them, and you'll be able to go through the information there. For now, though, find a quiet, comfortable place where you won't be distracted or disturbed. Relax and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in that resourceful feeling of calm and relaxation. And every exhale, consider it a release valve, allowing any emotions that have been building up, you feel like you've been suppressing, or just bubbling under the surface. Just allow them to be released gradually and incrementally every time you breathe out. And when you breathe in for longer, not just from your chest, but down from your diaphragm. That's it. And as you exhale, allow it to keep on exhaling. The deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the deeper you breathe. Scan your body for any clues of stress, worry, or tension. Sometimes it's there in the forehead, or the jaw, or the neck, or the shoulders. That's it. And really feel a sense of release. As your body relaxes, your imagination awakens. And I wonder if you could imagine what it would feel like to breathe in a color of pure relaxation. Maybe it's yellow or orange or something else. And just imagine it soothing your nervous system. And as you exhale, imagine something dark, shadowy, grey. Imagine releasing tension, stress, or worry. The body's been working very hard, carrying more than one person's emotional weight. It's been managing the professional and the personal and the physical all simultaneously. And it deserves right now the complete permission to release and just put all of that down. As you exhale, allow the shoulders to release. Allow the jaw to soften, the hands to open. The tiny space between the eyebrows to just smooth and release. And maybe you notice that as you release these physical holdings, something else begins to shift too. The quality of the internal space. A little more room, a little more quiet. A little more of the sense that you are, right now, entirely safe and entirely allowed to rest. You've been the most regulated person in a dysregulated system for a while. Not just exhausting, but draining in a specific way. The exhaustion of someone who's been carrying their own resources and someone else's chaos simultaneously. And right here, right now is the place where you release the chaos and nurture those internal resources. I want you to imagine, as I count down from 5 to 1, drifting to a haven within, perhaps a memory, perhaps a place that you've always felt safe, calm and relaxed. As I count down from 5 to 1, just imagine floating to that place. 5, drifting, floating. 4, just feeling the weight lifting off your shoulders. And 3, perhaps accessing a thought, a memory, a feeling. 2, arms and legs feeling limp, loose and relaxed. As you sink into that space of pure relaxation. 1, arriving perhaps here at the very center of yourself, where no one else has any influence over you. Not work related, no deadlines, no conditions. No facial expressions of disappointment or passive aggression. It doesn't exist here in this place. And when the nervous system has been running at this elevated level for a while, something happens that's worth understanding. All of that cortisol, adrenaline, stress, obsessive thoughts starts to feel normal. Tension in the shoulders or the jaw becomes background noise rather than signal. That low-grade alertness stops feeling like stress and starts feeling like this is how things are. Vigilance becomes normality. But when you remind yourself of a time of pure relaxation and rest, internal harmony and calm, the contrast becomes clear. As the body finds its way to genuine relaxation and stillness, the difference between that elevated state and how you're feeling now is unmistakable. Notice what you notice when you feel more relaxed. Maybe breathing slower, head lighter. That tension in your neck or your jaw just seems loose and relaxed. Maybe you can even scan your body and notice your heart rate starting to slow, muscles releasing. Maybe you're at your baseline or close to it, the state your body is designed to inhabit as the default. It's not been your default recently. You've been on high alert. You've been playing the game someone else wants you to play. but your body remembers. And the nervous system always remembers what rest feels like, even if it's been a long time. The body in genuine rest is doing some of its most important work, processing, integrating, clearing the accumulated chemical residue of sustained stress, restoring the neurochemical balance that sustained alertness depletes. Your nervous system knows how to rest, and you're giving it full permission to do so now. And every time you sleep, and every time you consciously choose to step back from all those burdens and demands that are not yours to carry. And you've seen movies and read books where a character has a force field, maybe a superhero or science fiction book. An empath needs a force field. An empath needs boundaries. A wall shuts things out, but it also shuts things in. But a force field is different from a wall. Imagine a force field as something permeable in both directions by deliberate choice. You allow what comes through and what leaves, but anything you choose not to is prevented. You can extend your attention and your empathy and your considerable professional intelligence through it, fully when you choose to. And you can withdraw them just as completely. And what comes toward you from outside passes through a membrane that you and only you control. You already have this capability. Sometimes people have it in a relationship or a friendship. Someone that used to be able to trigger them, they just make a decision and say no more. The words no longer sting. The power, the hold, no longer has the same impact. And I want you to imagine a force field in relation to one specific person. Just imagine seeing yourself, maybe on a meeting, maybe face to face or over a call. But imagine that version of you in your future with a field of energy surrounding you. It's not armor, not heavy and rigid. Something more like a quality of light, just at the edge of your personal space. A glowing membrane that is entirely yours. Maybe it's a color that represents resilience, detachment. Imagine that version of you surrounded by that force field. A force field you created and only you control. Notice the brightness, the color, the intensity of it. If it has a texture, maybe a texture like glass, or like glowing light. Maybe it has a temperature, a halo, luminescence. Just observe and then see that characteristic energy You know the tonality, the facial expressions, abruptness. Maybe it's interrogative questions in rapid succession, stopping you talking mid-sentence. A sigh, facial expression. Allow them to be exactly who they are and have shown themselves to be. But within your force field, something's different. Her energy does not permeate the force field. Maybe 1% of that energy is able to get through. You've had times where you've been out in the sun and you've had some sun protection, some lotion, and you know that only a tiny percent of the sun's damage can get through. And therefore you can be out in the sun for longer, safe. So imagine that version of you with this force field. Perhaps listening but not triggered. Perhaps more calm, composed. There'll be clues in your facial expression, your breathing. Unflustered, calm, professional. See the version of you entirely intact inside. And then take a first-person perspective. Imagine she dials up her energy, but you feel calm and relaxed inside the force field. Because you feel different, you can behave different. You can respond to a question with a question. What specifically do you mean by that? You've given me 5 things, which is the most important. If you were me, what would you prioritize first? And if you're met with sarcasm, abruptness, still feel that composure, calmness, unflappable. This is not you being cold or detached. It's not the shutdown of your empathy. It's the professional deployment of it. Your empathy is being used to understand what is happening, not to absorb what is happening. Some people figure out what buttons to press in other people. And if they press those buttons and they get more of what they desire, they'll keep pressing those buttons until those buttons don't work anymore. And I want you to imagine this force field enables you to be professional, competent, but now unwilling to play a zero-sum game where someone else benefits and you lose. Take a breath now inside the force field and breathe in pure resourcefulness. And as you exhale, feel the force field settling into place around you. See the color, feel the energy, the intensity. And just imagine connecting with that feeling, a feeling that you have resources within the force field, and anything that has been sapping those resources can no longer get through. And reach a point of acceptance. You can accept that people are different backgrounds, different beliefs, different narratives. Perhaps they were rewarded by being this way. Maybe they have no incentive to change. But that does not require you to change to accommodate them. I want you to get a sense that here you feel empowered. You've decided this whole game only works if you care about losing something that is already proven to be no longer desirable for you. When you reject the premise, you're free from any connotations of it. You don't need to meet that interrogation energy with defensiveness. You can be open up front. And if they amplify or escalate, that's on them, not you. I want you to get a growing sense that her behavior is predictable, maybe linked to insecurity, narratives of justification. I want you to get a sense that it is not personal. That if someone else was doing your exact role, they would probably experience a very similar energy and style of management. Let's play a game. Let's imagine that the more intense, the more like them that they are, the more comfortable and detached you feel. Consider yourself in reconnaissance, gathering information, soaking it all up. If you're asked a question, you can pause before a response. You could say, "Let me think about that, I'll get back to you." Allow yourself to feel that you have options. You can play your game. And I want you to go back to who you were before she was there. Compliments you've received, successes, achievements. Your value, your competency is not diminished simply because someone else is in the role that they're in. All that's happened is that someone has an agenda, is playing a game. And for now, up to this point, your good intentions, you seeing the best in others, has meant that you've been playing their game. But it reaches a point where enough is enough. And if you've been punished for playing that game, why would you continue to play it? Feel the quiet of that state within the force field. Notice how you breathe when you feel relaxed in the force field. How you breathe, your inner dialogue, your posture is exactly what harnesses this feeling. Your professional value was built before they arrived and will be intact long after this odd dynamic ends. It is yours and it cannot be taken. I want you to get a sense of feeling that when they won't change, the onus is on you to change. I want you to think of just 2 or 3 boundaries, rules, conditions, non-negotiables that you now need to protect you in response. I want you to think of 2 countries side by side that used to be friendly neighbors until one of them becomes an aggressor. And if that friendly neighbor continues to be friendly, they will be exploited by the more aggressive. And I wonder what boundaries you need to protect what is valuable. Time is a boundary. Maybe you choose to protect certain time and refuse to do certain things in that time. Or maybe it's time you take to respond. Another boundary might be what you're willing to tolerate. Bad things happen to good people. You get what you tolerate, not what you deserve. And when you refuse to tolerate, the status quo is no longer viable. Another boundary is your words, your actions. You don't have to decide them now, just allow your mind to consider what boundaries would keep you safe, would stop the encroachment, stop the erosion. And I want you to get a sense that there is no requirement for you to tolerate a role where you're not valued. If the circumstances won't change, you can choose to change the environment. And if your unconscious feels empowered to no longer tolerate what doesn't serve you, let me know by nodding your head. That's it. And take that feeling back as you float from where you are into the present. As you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Connect and calibrate into the here and the now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.